And next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is. Dum 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 dum. And it's the dumbest bill in America. You're not going to believe it. Moobs for dudes. Moobs for dudes. That's right. Senate Bill 682 in the state of Maryland, titled Trans Health Equity Act of 2022. Senator Mary Washington and Delegate Ann Kaiser on the House side, Senate Bill 682, the Moobs for Dudes bill. Folks, you heard this correctly. This bill actually makes taxpayers pay for Moobs for Dudes, among other things. We have a clip on this from the actual hearing. Here is Mary Washington, a state senator from the state of Maryland, talking about her bill. Here it is. Listen.
SB 682 does a few things. It requires that Maryland's Medicaid program provide gender-affirming treatment in accordance with a newly created Section 15-15. It defines gender-affirming treatment as medically necessary, 2, as prescribed by a licensed healthcare provider, and 3, treats a condition related to an individual's gender identity. Second, it requires Medicaid to cover gender-affirming treatment when it is medically necessary and according to the non-discriminatory standards that are highlighted in the amendment. Third, it prevents the denial of treatment under Medicaid based on gender identity and outdated standards of what is medically necessary. And also...
So what is medically necessary? We're talking about the Trans Health Equity Act. So now equity, podcast listeners, is being used in the term of, if you want to be a different sex, you must have equity in healthcare, not to check to make sure that your heart is working properly, or not to make sure that, you don't have high blood pressure, or that you need statins because you have high cholesterol. Oh no, to provide dudes moves. I'm going to throw this to Kathy.
Yes, this bill was in my subcommittee. And look, this is like a foreign language to most people, right? Like, you're wrapping your brain around it right now. So what this bill does is said Medicaid, which is publicly funded health care for poor people. So if you're on Medicaid and the government, which means us, taxpayers, are paying for your health care, and you are a transgender woman. And
what does that mean?
You notice I had to pause. So you're a man who now wants to be a woman.
Okay.
So you're a biological man, but so we're calling out a transgender woman, that you could get gender identity surgery, sex affirming, which mean a boob job. You could get a breast augmentation.
So boobs for dudes, basically.
Boobs for dudes.
Boobs for dudes.
Right. So I asked the question to the bill sponsor in the House. I'm like, look, I have a friend. I was out with her about 5 years ago, and she was called a man, and she was mortified. Like, I can't tell you how embarrassed she was. And if you're going to let a biological man have a breast enhancement, would you let my friend have a breast enhancement? Because it's for gender identity. Like, she really wants to not be confused as a man.
Sure.
And okay. She's, a straight woman.
But in your case, she had cancer.
No. She's just a woman that's pretty flat-chested woman.
Okay.
And she but the bill's called gender affirming.
Okay.
Gender affirming. So if you're affirming the gender, why can't women who want to be more affirmed as a woman, why can't they get a breast enhancement? Because it is truly if that's what the bill's about, enhancing your
Wouldn't those boobs for dudes like slow down Leah Thomas in Pennsylvania?
Well,
like, she's that's the he. So it's the dude that's swimming, that's won the NCAA title.
He probably wouldn't want to get that until his swimming career's over.
Oh, because right now that would slow him down.
Probably.
Yeah, I think so, because it's like drag, of course, when you're, well, excuse the term, but like when you're swimming, it slows you down, right?
Yeah. So they told me, they said no.
But
I'm like, so I said, can you get an attorney general opinion? Like, because if you're going to let people affirm their gender, let's let everybody affirm their gender, right? I mean, why not hair transplants? If you're a dude and you want a nice head of hair to affirm your gender as a man, can you get hair transplant. Like, can't we be fair? If we're going to affirm people's genders and make them feel better about their gender, but of course they said, no, Kathy, no. This is only for transgenders. This is not for straight people.
So it's primarily going to be.
It's not equitable then.
It is not.
There's no equity.
Great job.
That's our millennial.
Chris. There is no equity in equity. When does equity mean equity?
Right.
Only when you're a dude and you want boobs. Or how about for women? Like, would that be like?
You could have a mastectomy, I guess.
Oh, my word. I mean, I'm sorry. If you do that, you probably have you do have a serious mental health issue. I mean, who would mutilate their body in that way? I mean, why is that equity?
Well, and
why is
listen,
mutilation equity?
People want to pay for this with their own dollar. I still don't think that it's going to make you happy. But asking taxpayers to pay for that kind of surgery is wrong.
I couldn't agree more. I agree with you, but does this apply to kids? Like, how the Democrats are trying to teach children in pre-K and K and elementary school and middle school that there is no sex. Democrats,
they can choose their gender.
And that they can choose their gender. They really aren't biologically a boy or girl, which of course is a complete and utter scientific lie. But Democrats are trying to do that. Would this bill, Senate Bill 682, the Moobs for Dudes, allow children to get like puberty blockers and stuff like that?
Not yet. So it's 18.
So that's coming.
But that's why I said not yet.
You have to be 18 years old.
So right now you have to be 18, but the bill does talk about puberty blockers and other things. So
this is Moobs for Dudes, but in the future we could have tits for tots. By the way, podcast listeners, the reason I do this isn't just for humor. I do this because of the fact that this is how crazy the left is. They're trying to get a hold of your children. They're trying to get a hold of your children and convince your children that they are not a boy or they are not a girl. They're trying to do the same. And by the way, that's how we got where we are now. The reason we have largely, I'm convinced, so many adults who are 18 years of age or older who are saying they are not the sex that their biological sex the way they were born is because of the education system that's telling them that they're not. I'm convinced.
Yeah, there's some activists that work within the public schools and they're getting bolder and bolder and bolder. And that's why the Florida bill was introduced, because the activists in the school system are promoting this stuff.
They absolutely are. And Nick Freitas, we interviewed him. He's from a delegate from Richmond, Virginia. He tweeted out recently, any male-owned small business not immediately recertifying as woman-owned with the SBA right now is missing out on contracts and set-asides. And if anyone on the left gives you grief about it, ask them exactly why you don't qualify. And then there's another meme that's out there, and it's this little boy. He's like 4 years old, and he's saying to his teacher in a classroom, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. And then underneath of that is the Facebook information that says, false information checked by independent fact checkers. You can put independent fact checkers, right? So
well, it does make you wonder if now we need to do away with the Women's Caucus, women-owned businesses. Like, do we need to get rid of all, title? I mean, I've been a huge supporter of the Save Women's Sports. I introduced the bill in Maryland. We do need to say that biological men, Leah Thomas, is not a woman. He should not be allowed to swim against women.
I agree.
And the fact that the left has conflated all these issues and they can't figure out who's a man, who's a woman, have led us to
because
this.
the left doesn't believe in truth. Go ahead.
The Supreme Court nominee can't define what a woman is.
What a woman is, exactly.
Yeah.
And the Babylon Bee has an article that says NCAA swimming champ caught in possession of performance-enhancing testicles. And by the way, the Babylon Bee was canceled on Twitter because they were making fun of the Assistant Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, because she was made one of the top 10 women of the year by USA Today or something.
Right.
And I heard this the other day too, and I thought it was interesting. Tucker Carlson said, if the left can convince you about basic facts, that basic facts are wrong, like men are biologically men because of biology, and the same thing with women. if the left can convince you that is not so, then they can convince you of anything. And I thought that was a really good point, because that is Marxism. The purpose of Marxism is to convince you that all of your thoughts about societal, about science, for example, is not so. And therefore, you're willing to give up all of your freedoms because they convince you. What do you think about that?
Well, it's funny. We're the same age. In the scientific method.
We're not millennials.
We're almost millennials. Barely outside of them.
We have a millennial there. That's Chris right there.
Wait, I'm identifying as a millennial.
Would you like gender affirming treatment for that?
Yes. Can you make me look 20 years younger?
That'd be like...
I do want that.
Maybe you can get it for Medicaid.
Maybe if I just stop working and
right.
I can get Medicaid to pay for it. But, the scientific method is, my father is an atheist and he believes in the scientific method. So I was brought up, kind of adhering
What does that
to
mean?
that.
Scientific method.
So it means that you put out an hypothesis and then you try to decide if it's right or wrong.
Okay.
And science guides you. You don't you have a hypothesis and then you test it.
Interesting.
You
Okay,
don't
right.
say, that, that I can't pick something at global warming. You can't say we know it's global warming. Now we're going to do our research to support it. It says, is the globe warming? And let's keep testing.
Well, they call it climate change now, just so you know.
Let's keep testing that theory to decide if it is continuing to
So what
be
you're
true.
saying is they're saying that because you dress like a dude, because you dress like a woman and you're a guy, therefore you are by definition a woman, and we don't need to test anything
Don't
further.
test it again. Don't just take them at their word. But this is the party. I thought they were the party of science. Didn't they call the Republicans anti-science? And I mean,
Didn't they say follow the science for the last 2 years? And
Yes.
Now it's
It's the party of science fiction now. Let's face it. They're the party of science fiction.
or political science.
Yeah, because they
not-
want moobs for dudes. That's
not
science fiction. I'm
Real
sorry.
science, which says Leah Thomas is a man and should not be swimming in women's sports.
Did you see the governor of Florida awarded posthumously the first place NCAA championship to the woman who won, who was actually the second place winner because it was the only woman that actually truly won first place. But of course, the
and
NCAA
she happened to be
thinks
from
she should
Florida. So he took that opportunity to acknowledge she really did win. But yeah, this party of, quote, the party of science is not very scientific, because it is exactly what you said, Mark. When you can start saying that men are women and women are men, and, how dare you question that? And I can't define a woman?
definitions have no meaning.
Yes. I mean, what about...
No definition means anything, which is why I say to everybody, Kathy, and I say this to Chris too, it's very important, podcast listeners, that you go out and you actually buy hard copies of books, including hard copies of dictionaries and so forth, because when you rely solely on going online to check what the definition is of a word or a term, or you rely solely online to find out about historical events, I can assure you they're being changed, and they're being changed frequently. Because we're seeing it in real time in the legislature when they say this is really a woman and you better call this person a woman or you could lose your job. To which I say, look, I mean, if this individual really believes they're a woman, okay, fine. I'll be respectful. Okay. I'll be respectful.
Always respectful.
Always
right.
respectful. But don't think for 1 minute that inside of my head, I'm not saying to myself, as I would assume most people who have a thinking brain left would say, that's a dude, and that dude is dressed as a woman. And, that's got to be a really rough life if that's the way you want to live it, but good for you. Go do what you want. But don't ask me to pay to put moobs on the dude. I don't think I should be required to do that. That's ridiculous. That's against everything I believe.
Yes, and
really
it's insulting to taxpayers, as they're paying $6 a gallon for gas in California, and $800 to fill your oil tank to heat your house.
Yeah, they're not addressing that, and don't send them the dude with the moobs in the kindergarten class with children and talk to them about how he had a boob job and the state paid for it. And by the way, they can be just like him when they grow up one day. I mean, that's what the Democrats want. By the way, that's what Senator Mary Washington wants. And that's what Delegate Ann Kaiser wants. They really want these individuals who have mental health issues to go into your child's classroom and talk to them how this is okay. This is okay, and that they should talk about, by okay, I mean that it's okay to talk to people in kindergarten and first grade and second grade and third grade about these matters, you know, like drag queen happy hour inside of kindergarten class. It's disgusting.
Yeah. But let's not forget the real thing that they're doing. There's only 6 hours a day of classroom instruction. As a former classroom teacher, I will tell you the day goes quickly. And if you're teaching that, you are not teaching them how to read, how to write, how to tie their shoes, how to zip their coat, how to, numbers, colors, letters, all the things that kids need, basic foundational learning skills. You're not teaching that if you have time to teach the other thing, because the day flies like that. When you're a teacher, you're really, teachers are wonderful, and they are so dedicated in trying to fit all the basic skills in. And now you want them to what are you throwing out? What are you subbing?
Exactly. And the kid comes home and says, hey, Mommy and Daddy, guess what I learned? I learned about Senate Bill 682 in kindergarten, the Trans Health Equity Act of 2022. Isn't that exciting? And the parents are like, what? I mean, did you learn how to add and subtract, as you just said to your point, Kathy? I mean, go ahead. You have the last word on this.
Yeah, let's just talk about what's important in school. What is important in school is reading, writing, teaching basic skills. We have school systems right here in Maryland. Baltimore City has, 70% of the kids in a local high school cannot read at a third grade level. 70% of the kids. So why are we talking about these other things when you have an obligation to provide an adequate public education? And that isn't happening everywhere.
Because the left has lost its mind. That's why. They're just crazy. And I think that they're mentally ill, too.
Why are parents upset? Because my kid can't pass the standardized test.
Yes.
And we're saying, don't teach that in school. And you're saying...
But they know about trans, that's for sure.
Right.
That's, right. And that's the dumbest bill in America. Moobs for dudes. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins, and our guest, Delegate Kathy Shalega. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.